You might think that working on a Mini, one that BMW of all companies made, is just a little bit of a living hell, and while there are definitely some quirks, remarkably, it's not too bad. In this video, I'm going to be doing an oil change on our R50 or 2006 or 2001 to 2006 Mini Cooper, the 1.6 litre, and it's a remarkably easy job, obviously something that you can obviously do yourself and can also save yourself a pretty significant amount of money, as the parts that I'm using here, the oil and the new filter, only come to around 30 or so pounds, whereas a local garage would want more like 100 to 150 pounds to do this for you, and you can easily do this in a good hour at most, so it's well worth giving a shot. Now, if you are clever and careful, you actually technically don't need to jack up the car. There is just about enough space under it that you could do it without jacking it up, but if you do have a reasonable jack, then it's probably worth doing. I'm also doing some other work on our Mini, so I'm going to be jacking it up, which is the first step, and I've got a video on how to jack up your car safely if you're interested. I'll leave that in the cards above for you. In terms of the tools you need, you really don't need that much. You need a 13mm socket for the drain plug, a 36mm socket for the oil filter housing, and obviously ratchets to spin them, ideally a torque wrench to set them back to the correct spec when you're done. And that's kind of it. I guess a drain pan to catch all of your old oil and probably some paper towels to clean up the mess. But other than that, that's kind of it for tools, assuming you aren't jacking the car up. Of course, if you are, then it's a good idea to have a jack stands, and some chock blocks to stop the wheels from moving. Now, if you are jacking the car up, it's a good idea to do that now. Otherwise, you'll need to either remove the under tray if your car has one. Mine doesn't, so I'm going straight to removing the sump plug. It's a good idea to pop the bonnet with the handle that's in the driver's side footwell, just on the door frame, and then use the handle or the secondary latch just by the, as you look at the car from the front, the right hand side headlight to lift the bonnet up, and then remove the oil filter or the oil sort of inlet cap, which is the sort of star-shaped one towards the center of the engine bay. By removing that cap first, you allow air to be drawn in through that hole, so that when we take the sump plug out, the oil can drain out nice and evenly, rather than creating a vacuum as the oil leaves, which gives a less than ideal experience. But other than that, you should be able to then stick your 13mm socket on the sump plug and crack it loose. Now, in my case, the last mechanic who did an oil change on this car both used the wrong sump plug and also tightened it, I guess, got like 1970s Arnold Schwarzenegger to tighten it for him, because that thing was on tight. Like, I was using my 1/2-inch ratchet and it still wouldn't budge. So I cracked out my impact and got it free, remarkably without any damage. So quite lucky for me, but once it's out, you can then let it drain all of that oil. It might take a while, especially to get the last dregs and dribbles out, but once you do, you can then fit your new sump plug. You will need a new one, as especially if you have the factory recommended version, it actually has the rubber seals sort of baked onto the sump plug, and those seals perish when you install them, so it's a good idea to replace it. It's something like £3 or £4 from your car parts, so it's well worth picking up when you're picking up your new filter and oil. I would recommend threading that sump plug in by hand to start with to make sure that it doesn't get cross-threaded. Then once it's seated down, you can use your torque wrench to tighten it to 30 Newton meters. Once that's tight, if you have an under tray, you can stick that back on, and if you've jacked the car up, you can then put it back down on the ground, as our oil filter housing is in the engine bay, and it's towards the back side of the engine, towards, in the UK, the driver's side of the car, and it's sort of cantered over slightly, which can make it a bit difficult if you have a long 36mm socket like I do, which is why I had to go and pick up a second 36mm socket to be able to get this off. Now, you want to put that socket on and ideally put some paper towels under that filter housing so that when you crack it loose, any oil that's still in the filter housing won't, drip all over the engine bay and down onto the floor. It will be caught by those towels. But then you want to crack it loose. Now again, unfortunately, the same person who put the sump plug in probably also got 1970s Arnold Schwarzenegger to tighten this the filter housing back up, because I had to use my breaker bar to get this loose, and even then it was still quite a struggle. Once it was loose though, it's quite easy to get off. You'll unthread it and you'll pull the filter housing up and away from the cap away from the body so that you can bring the whole cap and filter along with it. Make sure that you, as you lift it up and out of the engine bay, you hold it so that the filter is facing upwards, as there will still be a fair amount of oil both in the filter and even in the cap that you don't want to be dripping out as you lift it out and away. Once you have the filter cap and filter element out of the engine bay, you want to remove the filter from the cap. It just sort of pops out. You just give it a pull and that's it. And you will probably want to drain the excess oil that's in there, and it's a good idea to give it a clean while you're at it. And then you can place your new filter in. It's a good idea to have a quick look at your old filter, just inspect it to check for any things like a large quantity of, say, metal debris. That's quite a bad sign to have. And just to check its overall condition and health. Mine looks okay, so you pop the new filter in the same orientation as the old one came out. And you will then want to replace the O-ring seal that's on the filter cap. In my case, I was able to just use my fingers to squeeze the seal up and lift it up and out of the way and off of the cab. But you might need to use a small pick to grab it and lift it off. In theory, since you're replacing it, you could even cut it free if you wanted. Just make sure to not score any of the metal on the cap. When installing the replacement seal, which should come with your new filter, you can then just give it a light film of oil over it to keep it lubricated as you basically just press it down on and get it back into the same groove that you took the original one off from. Once that's in place, again, make sure there's a nice little film of oil on it. Then you can place it back down into the engine bay and thread it on, ideally by hand, to make sure that you're not cross-threading it into its position, and then tighten it down, and that gets torqued to 25 Newton meters. Once the filter is in and your new sump plug is installed and tight, you can then pour all of your new oil in. This engine is meant to take 4.5 litres when fully drained, including the filter, so you want to pour about that much in, then check the level of the oil. It's probably going to be around about minimum. You'll probably want to fill it to maximum, as you will then want to start the engine so that you can fill up that filter housing and get a reasonable amount of oil in there and get it filled, get full oil pressure. Then you can turn the engine back off and check the oil level again, which is much more likely to be closer to minimum. So you can then top it off so that it's nicely between min and max. The last thing to do is reset the service indicator, which you can do without any software tools or anything else. You do it just from inside the car. With the key out, you want to hold the odometer reset button in the central speedo gauge. That's the little button to the right. Hold that down and then put the key in and turn it to the first accessory position. When it turns on, you should see the odometer gauge in the little screen in the middle read out 51A on the left-hand side top line. Once it says that, you can let go of the button, then hold it down again until that same section says RST. Once it does, it will be flashing that. You'll have a few seconds to let go, press the button one more time quickly, and that will reset your oil sort of service indicator or record, and that's it, pretty much done. You can then take the key out, and that's it saved, and you good to go for apparently another 15,000 miles. And that's pretty much it. It's a nice and easy process, and like I said, can save you a significant amount of money compared to getting it done at a garage, as long as you're willing to get dirty for an hour at the weekend. If this video has been helpful for you, then feel free to let me know in the comments and leave a like. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. And if you want to see more videos like this one on a weekly basis, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. You can pick up a hoodie or t-shirt like this one. This is the At the Wheel design with the link in the description below. You can also check out a whole load more videos like this one, both for the Mini and for a load of other cars, and full car reviews and a load of other stuff on the end cards, so feel free to take a look at those. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, found it useful, informative, or whatever else. We'll see you all in the next video.